Once again, the Queen of Consorts surprises us, but not in a good way.
Made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
The pen touched the paper just after sunrise, and with one controlled signature, Prince William ended Queen Camilla's public royal life. There was no ceremonial announcement, no smiling family photograph, and no warning delivered through polite palace channels. The emergency decree was already sealed. Her engagements were cancelled, her patronages suspended, and her authority over public duties removed. Inside Buckingham Palace, one phrase passed from room to room. William had finally said, "Enough is enough." Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William remained alone at the long desk, his fingers resting beside the pen as though touching it again might reopen the decision. The emergency decree, a formal order used to impose immediate royal restrictions, had taken effect before the household's morning briefing. That timing mattered because no advisor could delay it, soften its language, or protect Camilla through another compromise. When one aide asked whether the prince wished to reconsider, he closed the folder and answered that reconsideration was exactly what had allowed the crisis to grow. At 7:20 a.m., the first consequence became impossible to hide. Camilla's name vanished from the official engagement schedule, and the motorcade prepared for her visit to a children's literacy center was dismissed. Staff near the palace entrance watched the vehicles leave, understanding that this was not a warning or temporary embarrassment. Her public work had stopped in real time, while her remaining responsibilities were transferred to senior working royals, family members who regularly performed duties on behalf of the crown. Camilla was preparing to leave when her private secretary entered without knocking. She read the first page, removed her glasses, and placed them beside her tea with an unsteady hand. Then she asked whether Charles had approved it. Her secretary did not answer. The Queen Consort stared at the silence, realizing it carried a harsher truth than any sentence. The king had seen the decree before dawn, yet he had neither endorsed it nor stopped it. The hidden clause deepened the blow. It barred her from speaking on behalf of the crown, directing royal staff, or entering planning meetings without written authorization. William had not simply cancelled appearances, he had closed every route through which she could still shape palace decisions. By mid-morning, one question moved through every corridor. What had Camilla done to force such speed and severity? The decree revealed the punishment, but not the betrayal behind it. But before the palace could understand why William had removed Camilla, it first had to confront what each member of the royal family now stood to lose. The decree did more than cancel royal engagements. It forced every person inside the monarchy to choose where they stood. William believed he had acted to protect the crown. Camilla saw the order as a public humiliation disguised as duty. Charles found himself trapped between his wife and his heir. And Catherine, watching the strain settle across her husband's face, understood that the decision had turned a constitutional crisis into a deeply personal family fracture. William stood beside the window, silently rehearsing what he would say when he finally faced his father. The crown, the monarchy as an institution, rather than merely the person wearing it, could not survive another private struggle becoming a public scandal. He was not thinking only as Camilla's stepson. The prince was thinking as the future king, responsible for protecting the structure his children would one day inherit. Yet that sense of duty offered little comfort. He knew history might call him decisive, but his own family could remember him as cruel. Catherine moved closer and told him that making the necessary choice did not remove the pain it caused. She had watched her husband carry years of frustration in silence, but she also understood what the order had taken from the Queen Consort. Camilla had spent years building patronages, supporting charities, and taking part in ceremonial responsibilities. Those duties had given her more than visibility. They had given her legitimacy. Without them, she remained queen in title, but no longer in public purpose. Charles read the decree alone inside his private study. The king folded the first page backward, almost as though hiding the words could weaken their force. He loved his wife, yet he could not ignore the authority William would one day hold. His refusal to stop the order wounded them both. Camilla believed her husband had abandoned her when she needed him most, while the future monarch believed his father had waited until the crisis became impossible to contain. Camilla turned toward her private secretary and asked whether Catherine had seen the decree before it was signed. The question came quietly, but the resentment beneath it was unmistakable. She suspected the princess had influenced William, and that the suspension marked a calculated transfer of power toward the Wales household. Her secretary offered no confirmation, leaving the Queen alone with a suspicion that felt almost as painful as proof. William's phone remained face down until Catherine noticed the unread message. Princess Anne had written only 5 words in a private exchange: "Do not weaken the order." The warning suggested she knew more than the others, and believed ordinary palace discipline had already failed. The decree exposed old mistrust, but mistrust alone had not caused this rupture. One deliberate act during a major royal ceremony had pushed William beyond restraint, and when the palace looked back for the moment, everything changed. Every path led to the same locked room and the same forbidden instruction. 3 nights before William signed the decree, the royal family gathered for what should have been a carefully controlled Commonwealth reception. The speeches were approved, the entrances rehearsed, and every place in the procession had been settled. Yet minutes before the doors opened, Camilla issued a private instruction that changed the order of the evening. It appeared small to those watching from outside. Inside the palace, it was understood as a direct challenge to William's authority. William had been personally asked by Charles to lead the principal address, while Catherine was assigned to stand beside him during the receiving line. The Commonwealth reception, a formal gathering where the royal family welcomes diplomats, charity leaders, and representatives from member nations, mattered because it displayed the crown's order before an international audience. Every position carried meaning. Every name on the procession sheet showed who held authority and who represented the monarchy's future. Camilla waited until fewer than 15 minutes remained. She privately instructed the master of the household to remove Catherine from the principal position and place the Queen consort beside William instead. She also ordered staff to amend the printed procession sheet without consulting either the king or the prince. The sudden change left no time for a calm appeal, and almost guaranteed that resistance would create a scene before arriving guests. Catherine received the news while reviewing notes for her conversations with visiting delegates. She did not argue or ask anyone to intervene. The princess quietly folded the pages, thanked the aide, and stepped away from the entrance. William saw his wife move aside and felt the meaning instantly. Camilla had not merely adjusted a ceremony. She had diminished Catherine before the household and expected everyone to accept it for the sake of public calm. William entered a private antechamber and asked Camilla directly whether she had issued the order. She answered that the Queen decided where the Queen stood. The prince reminded her that Charles had assigned him the evening and approved Catherine's role. Camilla refused to reverse the change. She knew he now faced a brutal choice: disrupt the reception publicly or submit in silence. The deeper betrayal emerged after the guests had left. William received a documented communications order showing that Camilla had instructed palace staff to describe her as the senior royal leading the event, even though the king's original directive named his son. Soon after, the palace secretary produced Charles's handwritten note forbidding any procession changes without his approval. The Queen consort had read it earlier that day. Late that night, William placed the altered sheet, the communications order, and his father's note inside a red folder. Anne listened as he said another private apology would only restart the same cycle. By the following afternoon, William was no longer asking whether Camilla had crossed a line. He was preparing to tell her exactly what the crossing would cost. The meeting took place without photographers, secretaries, or advisors. William entered carrying the red folder. Camilla was already seated, her hands locked together as if she had rehearsed calm before he arrived. Charles stood near the fireplace but said nothing. For several seconds, no one moved. Then William placed the altered procession sheet on the table and told Camilla that she had not merely embarrassed Catherine, she had attempted to rewrite the crown's chain of authority. William had chosen a small palace drawing room because he wanted no officials hiding the truth behind careful language. No minutes would be taken, meaning there would be no formal written record to soften later. The prince opened the folder and laid out the amended procession sheet, the rewritten communications instruction, and Charles's ignored handwritten order. Together, the documents showed that Camilla had knowingly challenged both the king's command and the authority given to his heir during an international royal event. Camilla pushed the papers back across the table. She said she had acted to stop the queen from appearing secondary at a crown occasion, a formal event carried out in the monarch's name. Her voice remained controlled, but her hands betrayed her. She accused William of turning Catherine's embarrassment into a weapon and using one disputed ceremony as an excuse to weaken her forever. William did not raise his voice. He told her the issue was never simply where she stood. It was how often she had forced others to retreat so she could advance. When Camilla defended herself by listing years of royal service, the future king answered that service could never become permission. Charles finally lifted his eyes. The monarch understood that his son was no longer describing one broken instruction. He was naming a pattern the family had avoided for years. Camilla leaned forward and warned that removing a queen from public life would look like revenge. She said the country might see William's action as personal resentment disguised as duty, and she would not accept a restriction built on old wounds. The threat was unmistakable. If the palace tried to silence her privately, she might appeal to public sympathy instead. Camilla turned toward Charles and asked him to end the meeting. The king remained still before saying that William's evidence had to be answered. His words were quiet, but they broke something inside her. She had expected her husband to defend her position without condition. Instead, he had chosen silence until silence became judgment. William closed the folder and delivered the final warning. Because she would not step back voluntarily, he would activate emergency household authority, the power used to protect royal operations during an immediate internal crisis. Camilla's chair scraped sharply as she rose. Yet William's warning would have meant nothing without the hidden network of authority standing behind him, and the royal figure who had already decided Camilla could no longer be protected. William's signature appeared alone at the bottom of the decree, but the decision was not made in isolation. Behind it stood a small circle of people who believed Camilla's defiance had created a threat greater than one damaged reception. Princess Anne supplied the warning. Catherine supplied the restraint. Palace lawyers supplied the mechanism. And Charles, through one devastating act of silence, supplied the permission William needed to proceed. William had been given growing control over major engagements, long-term planning, and household coordination as preparation for kingship. That delegated authority, power formally passed from the monarch to another senior royal, allowed him to protect official operations when an internal crisis threatened the crown's work. It could not remove Camilla's title or end her marriage, but it could suspend every public function she performed. Charles had intended those arrangements to train his heir. Now they gave the prince the means to act when his father could not. Anne met William in a private office and placed Charles's handwritten instruction beside the altered procession sheet. She told him that loyalty to family could never require dishonesty toward the institution. The princess felt sympathy for her brother, but she believed years of protecting him from painful confrontations had allowed Camilla to test one boundary after another. William heard no anger in Anne's voice. That made her warning more powerful. Catherine refused to let humiliation become revenge. When William asked whether she wanted Camilla removed from public duty, the princess answered that the decision could not be made for her wounded pride. She was deeply hurt, yet she would not become the excuse for retaliation. Her restraint stripped away the easiest accusation against him. If Catherine did not seek punishment, then William's choice had to stand on duty alone. The legal review uncovered something darker. Palace lawyers found earlier cases in which Camilla's office had altered approved seating plans, changed patronage announcements, and rewritten briefing language after senior authorization had already been given. Each incident had once looked small enough to excuse. Together, they formed a pattern of pressure designed to expand her authority without open approval. William carried the completed decree to Charles, and placed it before him. He said he would not sign if the king directly forbade it. The monarch read every page, closed the file, and left the pen untouched. Then he spoke the sentence that changed everything. "Do what you believe the crown now requires." It was not a formal endorsement, but it was the permission his son needed. Before sunrise, Anne contacted the household. Catherine prepared to absorb urgent engagements, and the legal team sealed the order. When the decree reached the royal household, the first cancellations happened within minutes, and each one stripped away another part of the life Camilla believed she had secured. Camilla's removal did not arrive as one dramatic announcement. It came through a series of smaller wounds: a cancelled car, a returned speech, a patronage call redirected to another office, a gown prepared for a state dinner placed back inside its cover. By midday, the palace had transformed William's signature into a new reality. For the first time since becoming queen, Camilla watched the machinery of royal life move forward, while deliberately leaving her behind. Camilla's public diary was cleared for the next 6 weeks. The royal diary, the official schedule of engagements carried out on behalf of the crown, no longer listed her charity visits, military reception, literacy campaign launch, or place beside Charles at the coming state dinner. The invitations still existed, but her name had vanished from every operational document. That mattered because public duty had been the strongest proof that she belonged at the center of royal life. Catherine immediately received responsibility for 2 major patronages. Anne took over the military reception, while Sophie was chosen to represent the crown at the literacy event. The speed of the changes revealed that William had prepared for more than punishment. The prince had built a complete replacement plan, ensuring that no charity, guest, or foreign representative would see the monarchy hesitate simply because Camilla had been removed. Camilla accepted the revised diary from her private secretary and slowly turned through the empty pages. She stopped at the date of the state dinner and asked whether she was expected to remain upstairs while Charles welcomed foreign guests below. The aide could not answer. The queen closed the diary, but the silence remained. Her title survived, yet the visible purpose she had spent years building was disappearing hour by hour. Charles entered her sitting room after lunch and found her still holding the schedule. Camilla asked why he had allowed William to humiliate her. The king replied that the decree had not yet been publicly explained. She looked at him and said, "Every cancelled car was already an explanation." When he reached for her hand, she pulled away and reminded him that silence had still been a choice. Staff loyalty shifted next. Several aides were reassigned to the Wales and Princess Royal teams, and one senior official requested the move voluntarily. Camilla understood the deeper message. Those who once served her now believed William represented the future. The final wound came at the weekly planning meeting. An equerry blocked her path and presented the sealed clause barring her entry. She stepped back without speaking. That evening, Camilla sent William a handwritten note requesting one final private conversation. Catherine urged him to accept, warning that an order could impose control without creating understanding. And when William finally entered the room without the red folder between them, the battle for authority gave way to a far more painful reckoning between 2 people who had never truly trusted each other. There were no titles spoken when William and Camilla met that night. No aides stood outside taking notes, and no constitutional language protected either of them. She sat beside an unlit fireplace, looking smaller, without the machinery of office around her. William remained standing until she asked him to sit. For the first time since the crisis began, they were not the future king and the queen. They were 2 wounded members of the same fractured family. William agreed to the meeting only after making one condition clear. The decree would not be negotiated. They met away from the formal palace apartments, the official rooms used for royal business and ceremony, because neither wanted rank or protocol to control the conversation. The prince arrived without papers. Camilla had removed the insignia she normally wore during official meetings. Even that small choice mattered. She was no longer speaking through status. She was speaking as someone who feared she had already lost everything. Camilla admitted that the Commonwealth reception had exposed a fear she had carried for months. As William and Catherine accepted more duties, she felt herself disappearing from the center of royal life. Every transferred patronage and every altered schedule seemed to prepare the country to forget her while she was still present. The Queen confessed that she had tried to stop that decline by forcing herself back into the most visible position. William listened, but he did not soften the truth. He said fear might explain her choice, yet it could not excuse humiliating Catherine or ignoring Charles's direct instruction. The future king told her she had treated the family's future as a threat to her own relevance. His voice tightened when he said Catherine should never have been forced to surrender her place simply to prevent a public scene. Camilla remained silent before admitting that she knew the change would hurt Catherine. She had expected William to object, but believed he would protect the appearance of unity and accept the insult privately. Her spoken confession, made during that closed conversation, confirmed the deepest betrayal. She had relied on his restraint and used his fear of scandal against him. William then revealed that palace lawyers had prepared a second order, permanently removing her from public royal service. The unsigned document remained in his office. Whether he signed it depended not on an apology, but on whether she accepted that her former authority would never return. Camilla finally chose surrender. She promised not to challenge the decree, attack Catherine, or pressure Charles to reverse it. She asked only to support selected charities privately. William agreed, but restored no official duty. By morning, the private surrender had become a public earthquake, and one single image outside Buckingham Palace came to define the nation's response. At dawn, newspaper vans stopped outside Buckingham Palace before the official statement had even been released. Broadcasters interrupted their schedules. Crowds gathered behind the palace railings, staring toward windows that revealed nothing. Then the first front page appeared, a photograph of William leaving the palace beneath the headline, "The heir takes control." In that instant, the family's private rupture became a national verdict on power, duty, and the future of the monarchy. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Camilla would withdraw from all public duties after a review of household operations and approved royal protocol. Royal protocol, the formal rules governing duties, rank, and official behavior, mattered because the dispute had begun with those rules being ignored. The statement named William as the authority behind the suspension and announced that Catherine, Anne, and Sophie would temporarily assume the affected engagements. The message was controlled, but its meaning was brutal. The monarchy had already reorganized itself without the Queen Consort. Television presenters called the decree the strongest intervention by an heir in modern palace history. One morning program opened with an empty chair carrying Camilla's name beside a live palace image. The Queen remained titled, yet publicly absent. Supporters praised William for defending discipline and preventing private influence from overruling formal instruction. Critics accused the prince of humiliating his father's wife and creating a dangerous precedent. Britain was now arguing over the same painful choice that had divided the family: duty against compassion, continuity against loyalty. Charles sat alone as the front pages were placed before him. The king paused over William's photograph beneath the words, "The heir takes control," then folded the paper until the headline vanished. He understood what the country could now see. His son's authority had become visible because his own hesitation had become impossible to hide. The monarch had protected peace for too long, and that silence had allowed someone else to define the future. By afternoon, several hundred people gathered near the Victoria Memorial. Some held signs supporting William, while others placed flowers near the railings for Camilla. One elderly woman touched the palace fence and told a recorded television interview that the crown had chosen its future, but at a terrible personal cost. Her words spread across broadcasts because they captured both relief and grief. Camilla rejected a public defense. Through a written statement authorized by her office, she accepted the suspension and expressed continued support for her charities. William now knew the decree could not remain defined by scandal alone. And when he finally stood before the household that evening, he delivered not another punishment, but the principle that would become the final verdict on the entire crisis. The final moment did not come with another signature. It came when William entered the palace briefing room and faced the people who had carried out his order. Catherine stood to one side. Anne remained near the back. Charles arrived last, his expression heavy but composed. Camilla was not present. William looked across the room and made one truth unmistakably clear. The decree had never been about destroying a woman. It was about ending a culture of silence. William told the household that no title gave anyone the right to ignore approved instructions, diminish another working royal, or reshape the crown's public position through private pressure. The emergency decree, an immediate formal order used to protect royal operations during a serious internal crisis, would remain in force. Camilla's public duties would not return. His words carried no triumph. The prince understood that the monarchy could not demand discipline from the country while refusing to enforce it inside its own walls. Catherine would permanently retain the major patronages transferred to her. Anne would assume responsibility for the military events once assigned to Camilla, while Sophie would continue leading the literacy program. The new arrangement proved that the palace had not merely paused during a family dispute. It had moved forward. Every reassigned duty protected charities, guests, and national commitments from becoming casualties of private conflict. Charles rose when William finished. The king admitted in a documented household address that his reluctance to confront the tension had allowed it to deepen. He neither condemned his son nor defended his wife's actions. Instead, the monarch said, leadership sometimes meant accepting a decision that caused personal pain, because avoiding it would create even greater damage. His voice remained steady, but everyone understood what the admission had cost him. Camilla received the permanent schedule inside her private rooms. She moved her hand across the empty dates before closing the diary herself. The queen consort now understood that her fight for public authority was over. She had lost influence, ceremony, and position, but she had not been erased from the family. William returned to his office and removed the unsigned order that would have permanently barred her from royal and charitable involvement. Because Camilla had honored her private promise, he tore the document in half. She would never recover public power, but she would retain dignity and the freedom to support selected causes privately. Catherine asked that no celebration follow. She reminded William that protecting the monarchy should never require enjoying another person's fall. His signature removed Camilla from public duty, but its deeper legacy was greater. It ended an era in which the palace protected appearances at any cost, and began one in which the crown chose responsibility, even when responsibility broke the hearts of those inside it. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.